Early Ticker brought to you by Pelican Brewing. Visit pelicanbrewing.com for more details on locations, events, award-winning beers, independently brewed since 1996. Pelican Brewing, born at the beach. We are awaiting Mike Doc Parker live from Lexington, Kentucky, I believe. Getting ready to call the Oregon State Super Regional, which begins tomorrow. Oregon and Oregon State, their regionals or super regionals begin tomorrow. Some of them around the country begin today, and we have them now at MEP OSU. One of our favorites to talk to as Oregon State gets ready to take on Kentucky. Doc, good morning to you. We enjoy getting off the beaten path with you from time to time because you're such a well spread out figure, and you have so many thoughts on so many different topics. I was just curious to start. We'll get to Oregon State, obviously, big moment, the Super Regional. If you had any thoughts, emotions, or feelings about the 80th anniversary of D-Day being yesterday.
Oh, my gosh. Well, yes, and thanks, guys. It's good to be on with you. Yes, my dad landed at Omaha Beach. So, yes, in a word, yes. And 2 years ago, my daughter Lydia and I made a trip to Europe and went to the spot, we believe anyway, close to where he did. He was more in the third wave. He wasn't in the first wave in, but he came in the third wave, and he was a medic in World War II, and didn't talk much about his experiences, but the carnage that he said that he encountered and the people that he was they were images that were traumatic and stayed with him his entire life, and he didn't talk much about it with me until later in his life, near the end of his life. I pressed him more on, and one day I remember he pulled out a map, and we sat at his kitchen table, and he showed me where he landed and then his movements thereafter, all the way to the Battle of the Bulge, which he was also a part of. So my dad, yes, to answer your question in a word, guys, and I appreciate you asking, when we went to Normandy, my daughter and I, 2 years ago, I was just overcome, by the emotion of seeing where my 22-year-old father landed. One thing I did learn, too, and I understood more than ever, when I grew up in Southern California, we enjoyed, as most kids do there, going to the beach and splashing around and body surfing and boogie boarding and all those things. And my dad was not much of a beach person. And one day I asked him about it, and he said, well, the first time he ever saw the beach and the sand was landing in Normandy.
Wow.
And one can imagine that wouldn't, first impressions being what they are. He never really reconciled himself. He took us as a good parent and a good father would, but he didn't get in the water much. He just kind of sat and watched us splash around and play. But when he looked into an ocean and saw a sandy beach, it reminded him of some terrors in his life. So guys, I appreciate you asking. And yes, yesterday was a very emotional day. And 2 years ago, visiting Normandy was as emotional as I can remember being in my adult life.
Well, that was pretty powerful. I can't wait to ask baseball questions now. Thanks, Dirt. I appreciate you starting that off.
I set you up for that one. My bad.
Oh, it was a remarkable story, and okay. So yesterday's an emotional flashback for you, and Doc, thank you for sharing that. Actually, those stories are not always easy for people to share about their parents and going through traumatic experiences, and that was obviously a different generation. Didn't talk about it as much.
Well, I think with the loss of that generation, too, it's important for the children to keep telling those stories because most of that generation is now nearly gone.
Yeah, you're right. And so, again, I do appreciate it. And yes, yesterday as we were making the charter flight from Corvallis, guys. We flew out of Corvallis. Hey. What a life-changing experience that was. To speak about a ridiculous subject after what we just touched on, but it was nice to be able to fly out of Corvallis. And, yes, it was much on my mind as we made the trip and into Lexington, first time I've ever been in this city. And it's a pleasant 71 degrees. We had to escape Oregon and the heat because I hear you're going to be 86 today. I think it's going to be 77, 79 the next couple of days down here. The humidity isn't oppressive by any means, and it feels good, and it's good to be here.
Anytime you get to a super regional, I think it's a huge achievement. Obviously, Omaha, for a team that has won 3 national championships, is the minimum goal or the hopes, I think, of a lot of fans. Whether that's realistic or not, that's always kind of the hope or thought. Kentucky's a tough team. I'm not going to pretend to know a whole lot about Kentucky. I want to ask you, what was like your biggest or a couple of your biggest takeaways from what they did in the Corvallis Regional to move on to Kentucky that you saw from Oregon State? Because at times, not that they lost a whole lot, Doc, but back end of the pitching staff was a little shaky, had to score a lot of runs. What did you take away from the Corvallis Regional that left you optimistic as you guys head to Lexington?
Well, it's certainly going to be a tough and tall order here against a really good team, but the Beavers are coming in, I think, in many respects at their best, which is what, you want to be hot in the end. And the offense continues to perform at a very high level, but the really encouraging thing to me, the emergence not only of 2 really good starters that I think with Aiden May and Jacob Kamatz, the first 2 starters down here. Now, they have some good arms here, too, don't get me wrong, but those guys are veteran guys who I think, really give the Beavers a chance when they're starting with the offense the Beavers have. They can win. They can beat anybody with those 2 guys. So I'm encouraged there, and their pitching really is at a high level, the best they have all year. But added to that, the emergence of a big physical left-hander out of Jesuit and Nelson Keljo, who's been just kind of an ace in a long-term form out of the bullpen if guys do falter early or maybe in game 3. Keljo's been a pretty strong bridge to a back-end guy in Bridger Holmes, who essentially closed all 3 games in the Corvallis Regional. So those 4 arms right there, you need more than that probably to win a super regional. And I think they do have other guys they can go to that they can rely on. But I'm just encouraged by the way the starting pitching and those 2 bullpen aces have been working here coming into the super regional. I think it gives the Beavs a real chance in a best 2 out of 3 format to emerge and get back to Omaha.
What do we know about Kentucky, and how do we feel about the matchup?
Well, Kentucky is, and I give them credit for it in the modern era. I mean, they're very good offensively, and they can hit home runs, and they've got a guy with 20, and they've got other guys with some power. But they're an old-school team, a little bit like the Beavers used to be in terms of running, 113 stolen bases, and the second most among the 16 teams still surviving into the postseason. They led the SEC in sacrifice bunts. Now, I know that doesn't sound sizzly or sexy per se, because the Beavers led the Pac-12 in home runs. How about that? But what I'm saying is they're a dangerous team because they score in a lot of ways. They put a lot of pressure on the defense and on pitchers. And so May and Kamatz in particular early when they get guys on base have to keep pitching their game and not be too distracted by a bunch of guys in the lineup who will run. They have 4 guys with over 10 stolen bases, which is a lot in this day and age. And they bunt, they run, and they pressure you in the running game. So they hit 289 as a team, which is solid, not great, but they do a number of things to distract you. They get hit by pitches, and the Beaver pitching staff collectively has had a little bit of an issue. They cleaned it up a little bit, I thought, for the Corvallis Regional, but they can hit guys. They don't walk a lot of guys, but they hit guys sometimes. And Kentucky will get on base that way, too. And they're great defensively. That's the other thing. I think Kentucky is elite up the middle with their second baseman and shortstop. The plays that I've seen them make on video highlights and just most recently in some of their regional games, they're really strong defensively, so they won't, quote-unquote, beat themselves. But I think the matchup, in answering your question, how does the matchup look? I think it's a really good matchup. I'm looking forward to a series here with 7,000. Suddenly, Kentucky fans have come out. I mean, we know that it's a basketball school, but they love winners, and Kentucky's winning at a high level. Number 2 in the country and the favorite, so to speak, in the Super Regional. So I know the Beavers are going to encounter 7,000 crazed fans, and the Beavers will have 300 or 400 in their corner.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. We're here rooting for an Oregon State matchup in the College World Series. That would be a lot of fun. So we'll see if the state can be well represented. And thanks so much for the stories about your dad, Doc. That was really cool and an awesome thing to think about. And Normandy's always been on my bucket list of places of wanting to go, and that just solidified it for me of having the chance to see it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, and I know. I mean, we will think of many, many, many brave, courageous, and incredible souls that hit that beach on June 6th and thereafter. And I appreciate you thinking about my dad when you do go there. I appreciate it, Andy and Brandon. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great stuff from Mike Parker, the voice of Oregon State, where I wasn't quite sure. I loved asking Doc random questions because he gives us great answers on everything, anything you ask. And that was incredible stuff.
It was a remarkable telling of the story, and I'm not chuckling at that. Him telling those experiences of his dad being a medic, and I mean, just kind of dumb luck in a way of like he's the third wave of people, he's not the first wave of people, and just what that in itself means. I don't know. It just kind of felt like you randomly asking such a depressing but insightful and a story that needs to be told.
Yes.
And then here I am, like,
hey, what do you think about their bullpen, Doc?
So, Kentucky's pitching staff, is it stacked?
How do you feel about their starting pitching?
Oh.
Great. I could talk to that guy all day long, man. Doc's one of the best, and we always enjoy the time. And
that's got to be a trip to go visit that.
Might be number one on my all-time bucket list of places to go visit.
Well, and I think it's a reminder, too. I saw some stuff yesterday, one of the soldiers thanked Zelensky and called him a hero, and he said, "No, you saved Europe.
Yep,
you're the hero." And like they had a really nice exchange. I thought the ceremony for the veterans was really, really well done and classy. And
not many of them left.
There's not a lot of them left. Just interesting to hear. Even the smallest little thing that you and I and many people our age, even a little older, Swag's age, will never think about is like guys like Mike Parker's dad that don't even want to be at a beach.
No, the rest of their life. He was 22 years old.
And by the way, the first time he saw the beach,
see the ocean and the sand.
So it's like blood in the water and
carnage.
Awful stuff on the beach, and just I can watch Saving Private Ryan all day. There's a lot of people that can't.
Yeah.
And that was really well done by him to kind of share that stuff. That stuff's not always easy for people to want to share publicly.
It's important to continue to tell those stories, and I'm glad we got that one from Doc.